Okay. So I think I was saying that I teach letterpress printing, which is the outmoded technology, kind of pretty much abandoned as an economic model for printing in the middle part of the last century, from about 1955 to 1970. Things were phased out. But I also teach a class in using the latest in digital technology, which involves the Adobe Creative Suite and the use of digital printing methods, which have made printing much more accessible to students and others who are interested in publishing. So in addition to being an adjunct faculty member, I am also a book designer for the University of Iowa Press. So I work in both worlds too. I'm very comfortable in the printing worlds of the past and current printing methods. And I like to use them both in my work, combine them, and as part of my teaching mission, to try to integrate digital aspects with the hands-on for our students. First, just a short history of the center, because it's really, Iowa has a very rich history in this private press printing and publishing, dating back to the 1940s when Wilbur Schramm, who was the chair of the UIJ journalism school at the time, hired Carol Coleman to be the first director of the typography lab, which was situated in the journalism school. Coleman was from Muscatine, Iowa, and he had been printing and publishing private press books from about 1935, and he was able to continue doing that as he held his job here. He taught classes in typography and publication design to journalism students who were expected to end up in jobs managing print production. So it's very practical sort of coursework. This is a yearbook picture taken in the first lab, which was in Seashore Hall, 1952. And this equipment is now at the Center for the Book, looking pretty much the same as it does right there. The second director of the lab was Harry Duncan, who is from Keokuk, Iowa, Grinnell College English major, who thought he would have a life as a poet, but instead traveled to the Northeast and became a co-founder of the Cummington Press, which was really one of the preeminent private presses of the last century. So he taught here until 1972, when Kay Amert took over the lab. There's another great shot of the equipment that we have now. Kay was also, like these other two directors, was a printer publisher, and her imprint was the C-Mark Press. So a rich history of faculty bringing private press publishing, bookmaking to the campus. Here's a shot of Kay in the lab. She was actually the director of the lab during a really very turbulent time and big changes in printing technology. So by 1994, this space wasn't used much because the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, of course, was teaching students, how to survive in the industry, so they had moved to digital technology. But the lab kind of sat around almost museum-like until 2010 or so, when the Center for the Book acquired the materials and moved them to North Hall, which is where most of our classes and studios are. Another big part of the center is Kim Merker, who came here in the 1950s for the Writers' Workshop, that ended up studying with Carrie Duncan and also deciding that he would make a better printer than poet. So he brought great editorial skill to a private press that he convinced the university to set up within the English department of the Windover Press, which was founded in 1967 and printed in the English department in 102 EPB until about 1995. I think the last book published there. So Kim Merker envisioned something bigger than just letterpress printing, and he brought other interdisciplinary practitioners of book arts here to the campus. Tim Barrett, who's sitting in the room in his older state. This is Tim at the UI Research and Production Paper Facility out in Oakdale, which still operates. And Kim Merker also brought to the UI Library's first conservation director, Phil Anthony. This position is currently held by Giselle Simone. So this has been, since this position was created, it's been stable, and it's almost unique among universities, not totally unique, but quite unique among university libraries to have a conservator. Mostly going to talk about printing today, but I wanted to show you pictures of this is paper making facility in North Hall. This is our bindery. And this is the letterpress printing facility for students. So letterpress printing, for those of you who haven't done it or seen it, it's hand-set metal type. Letters are set from this case on the left. Letters are put in this composing stick, the top right, one piece at a time, line by line, and then the lines are built up to a block of type, which you can see on the lower right. That block of type is put in the middle of the press bed, which you can see on the flat part of this press. This student's about to print in red ink. Those are the rollers that are inked up. This is a Vandercook Group press. These were built in Chicago. The Vandercook company was located in Chicago. These were built from about 1902 to 1970 something, and this one dates from about the 1950s. You used to be able to get these for free if you would haul them in the back of a truck. They were used to proof materials before they were sent to the high-speed production presses. Now they're people are asking even up to like $15,000, $20,000 for some of these Vandercook Group presses, which are now mostly used in the service, used by artists. So these are some examples of the books that our students create from this sort of outmoded technology, the letterpress printing, both what we call fine press books, which are more of a literary nature, and artist books, which force people to read a little non-literally, a little more creatively. They sort of challenge the reader to present content in unexpected ways. So we're going to talk about 3 books that are open here that all have kind of a variety of publishing missions. And this is something we work with our students on, kind of developing their, what is their intent, what do they want to say as they publish. And this requires a close study of a book's content, the text, the images, the narrative, how the author and printer wants to present this narrative to an audience. And all these questions bear on the choices of the book structure, its materials, the design. All these things are determined and given thought with the way the readers will engage and operate the book. The book in the center with the very nice calligraphy on the page is a reprint of a 19th century poem called A Dilettante by Augusta Webster. This is printed by Laura Kapp, one of our students who just completed her MFA. She also has a PhD in English from Iowa. So you can just see the hints of the poem, kind of a traditional poetry presentation on the page. But this is, the book is punctuated by these page spreads of enlarged text, calligraphy, and kind of a transparent handmade sheet that's sort of pausing the reader at certain points, highlighting certain text, and giving the books actually some a crisp sound as the reader pages through it. It's very it's a very tactile book to operate. So this student has chosen to pace the reader and pull out certain words. The book on the top right is called Walden Marginalia, or The Contents of a Dozen Shanties. And it's an examination of the margin notes that this student found in 12 copies of Thoreau's Walden in various libraries around the country. She actually traveled and looked at them. The book, you can see, is really just about the marginalia and her comments on it. The actual text of Walden has been withheld to focus on the marks of the past readers. And as Amelia Bird, the artist, puts it, Walden Marginalia turns the same kind of close attention Thoreau inspired in his readers onto the readers themselves. The text that accompanies the images of marginalia has the tone of a personal essay and serves as a commentary on reading habits and assumptions about nature writing. Amelia was one of our students, but also a student in the nonfiction writing program. The book on the top left is Crooked by Kim Maurer. It has a very innocent look. It's got pop-up structures. It wraps around to make a carousel structure, which is kind of a full reading in the round, you could say. And kind of a childlike structure and imagery. And this is one of Kim's points, is to bring the reader in expecting something kind of innocent and then sort of subtly reveal a much darker story. This one about containment, notions of escape, and breaking free from oppression, which so she has an interesting juxtaposition that isn't revealed until you've kind of already committed to something like one more book. This is I actually have a copy of this with me. If you want to look at it afterward. Letterpress Erasure. Here's the text on the page. This is also done by Amelia Bird, and it's the same found text is printed on each page, and then she goes through a process called erasure, of eliminating some of the text to recreate her own text from this found text, which is actually this was a block of type she found on a rack in her shop that turned out to be an essay written by Lawrence Lepore, a historian at the University of Iowa. So she uses another page, letterpress processes to letterpress on letterpress to mask the text in a different way each time, in different methods and linoleum blocks, other ways of relief printing. This I'm showing you is kind of an interesting hybrid of artist books and fine press books, the very traditional typesetting references, fine press, and the erasure, more artist books. Okay, the state of the art. This photo is actually from a hand-printed book class I taught last year, and one day I found myself in this room with all the students in front of computers, no one in the letterpress studio, and I just shot the picture because I just thought, well, this is crazy. Interesting in a way. But a lot of initial layout and design for letterpress printing is now done on computers. And for the other class I teach in book and publication design, all the work is done on the computer. These are some of the books from that class. Students use InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator to design and lay out a book that's of their own choosing. All the content is theirs to work with, and they bring that in. And then some students use laser printers on campus. Other students send their books out to places like lulu.com and blurb.com, which are online sites that you send PDF files to, and they print the books and send them to you. You can order as little as one copy of these books. So it makes publishing very accessible, for better or worse. people can pretty much create and be publishers. This is known as on-demand or short-run digital printing. And some students combine technologies. The book on the left has hand-sewn binding and a letterpress printed cover to go along with the laser printed inside. This is not a piece of equipment we own. This is about $750,000 digital printing press. But this is the kind of printing. If a student sends out a book and has it printed in color, this is how it's done now. And this is considered digital printing. This is an HP Indigo. Beautiful results, and this type of printing. These printers are constantly updated. Most print providers just print them because the technology is changing. It's a kind of a enhanced photocopier process, electrostatic printing, the toner, the liquid, the ink. They call it a liquid ink, but it's almost a toner. If you get a chance to see it. But you can also you get a sense, or I get a sense of this very sterile environment compared to our letterpress lab. These machines are very susceptible to humidity changes and dust. So pretty much this is the kind of environment. This is an espresso book machine, which I just saw last week at a book arts conference at the University of Utah. The Marriott Library owns this and makes it available to students for $25 and 5 cents a page. $25 is a one-time fee. So, and then 5 cents a page, they can print their own books. And this is the tech who works in the library and operates this machinery. I talked to him for a while, but it seems to operate pretty few maintenance issues. I think it's kind of an exciting addition to think about for the University of Iowa. So this machine only prints in black and white for the interior, and it's a color cover. Students there have been able to get the tech to accept letterpress printed covers to run through the machine. So it's, one of the drawbacks of these machines, at least for book artists, is the limits on materials that can be run through them. And if you can become friendly with the operators and bring them cookies and talk to them about kind of stretching the limits and working with papers that book artists find interesting. One example of a student work from the book and publication design. This was printed by blurb.com. This is the book, the front and back covers. The books are opened up. The student, Andrew DeForge, actually took a paper from this EPA on sustainability and redesigned it, working to make it not only more interesting, but actually more accessible, easier for people to understand the graphs. The image on the left, that's a hard title page. It's decorative, but it references the actual way he handled this flow chart, for example. So bringing some appeal to books is part of the class, part of book design. This is just a historic book in terms of people who study book arts, and I'm showing it because it's now available as an iPad app. These are not the iPad apps. These are pages. On the left is the original Victorian novel that this book artist Tom Phillips altered beginning in the 60s. He's still working on it. There's a 5th edition that just came out last year. He draws and re-guides the reader through the text, and then works it over and over. So this is both the same page. He's done some cut and paste from other pages in the book, as well as writing and marks on top of the text. This is the app which I take pictures of, and it's not only the book available on the iPad. There's a new element to it, Your Fate and Fortune to Divine, which is based on today's date and the number that you choose from the spinner that activates when you open the app. So whether this is a good thing or not, I don't know. But it's the beginning of actually artists working with the iPad, with digital technology. We have, I know of an NEH grant that went to Columbia College. They have money for 2 book artists to work on in a digital original artist book. And Tim Barrett just reminded me today we have a student working on animating watermarks as part of her work. Okay, I'm just going to conclude. I wanted to talk briefly about undergrads. Our degree program is an MFA, it's for graduate students, but our classes are open to undergrads who can get in, and we also have some elements classes that are specifically designed for undergrads where they get introductions to all these processes. And for 3 or 4 years now, Tim has taught a first-year seminar for honor students here. I've helped out with the printing section. I love the students. I never see students so young. Our grad students are, have usually been through a little living, but these kids come in and they're so green. But I like to sort of torture them with imagining their life with all these old technologies and having to slowly build a book by hand. I just have them think of that, try to have them focus and slow down and imagine how things used to be. I discovered a few years ago that most people had never tried it. Most of these students have never used a typewriter, so I'd bring one in so that students not using the press would have a chance at another historic printing method. And they almost always think it's very hard to use a typewriter. They do have fun. So I want to end with a comment that one of these students wrote to Tim after this class, which I think makes it interesting while we're spending today thinking about all these digital technologies. And this is the quote. I made a book. I made a book. I came home from the class holding a book bound by my hands. Yes, it was a small book, 1 folio, bound with a single piece of thread and wax and 1 little dull point needle. But I was the one who took that needle and used it to put a cover over the pages. I made that book. There's something so personal in that, I'm not even sure how to say it exactly. In a way, that book, no matter who I give it to, and I already have plans to give it to a friend of mine who is in a bad sort of way, that book will always have a hint of me in it because it has that touch of me in the threads, holding it together in the color on the front. It's mine. Thank you.